The galaxy was a tapestry of empires stitched together by treaties, grudges, and fragile alliances, but one thread remained a mystery to all the old powers: humanity. They had risen from a quiet corner of the Orion Spur, insignificant at first, their homeworld scarred by internal wars, primitive compared to the silver towers and glittering armadas of the older species. Yet whispers began to circulate when their tiny blue planet sent out signals, then probes, and finally their first interstellar ships. The Kelver Dominion laughed, dismissing humans as latecomers, mere primitives trying to catch up to a 1,000-year head start. The Roth Collective sneered that humans were reckless barbarians who destroyed their own ecosystems before they could even leave their cradle. But when Earth's colonies spread like wildfire across 3 systems in less than a century, the laughter dimmed. The first time humans fought pirates near Tau Ceti, the reports horrified the Council worlds. Human warships were crude, blocky things compared to sleek alien frigates, but their crews fought with an intensity that bordered on madness. Boarding actions that should have broken weaker species turned into bloodbaths for the attackers. A single human captain, armed only with sidearms, held an engine bay against 10 armed raiders until relief arrived. The galaxy had expected humans to ask for protection, for mentorship, for gifts of technology to climb faster into the stars. But instead, humans simply built, fought, and learned on their own, as if they had been preparing for this moment their entire existence. That was when the Thalkor Syndicate, the galaxy's most feared arms merchants, decided to intervene. Not out of kindness, but out of a mix of arrogance and profit. They came forward to help these newcomers, offering their advanced plasma lances, shield harmonics, and particle cannons, all packaged with diplomatic smiles and the promise of alliance. To the Thalkor, humans were ripe customers, warlike, ambitious, eager to gain any edge. What they didn't understand yet was that humans didn't think in the same way. They didn't buy into the illusion that the galaxy's weapons were the ultimate pinnacle of warfare. When the offer was laid before the United Earth Fleet in the Grand Council chamber of Proxima Station, the response was not desperation, not gratitude, it was confusion. The human admiral leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and with a raised brow asked, "Why would we downgrade?" The room fell silent, the question cut sharper than any blade, echoing across the chamber where representatives of countless species had gathered to witness the negotiations. The Thalkor delegation, tall and armored in ceremonial plates of obsidian, stiffened in offense. Downgrade. Their weaponry was the envy of empires. Their plasma cannons could pierce battleship hulls in seconds, their shield harmonics were unmatched in balancing energy efficiency with resilience, their smart munitions had turned countless wars in their customers' favor. To call them inferior was an insult beyond measure. One of the Thalkor, voice crackling through a translator, leaned forward and demanded an explanation. The human admiral did not flinch. She gestured to the holographic projection of the Earth Fleet's latest vessel, the UNSV Dauntless. By alien standards, it was ugly, a blocky mass of armor plating and kinetic launch arrays, but its specifications made even the most hardened warlords frown. The Dauntless carried rail cannons capable of firing tungsten slugs at fractions of light speed, projectiles that ignored energy shields and shredded matter with raw kinetic force. Its hull plating was not energy-based at all but forged from advanced alloys designed to absorb, dissipate, and shrug off directed plasma fire. Its engines were optimized not for sleek maneuvering but for brutal, sustained acceleration, willing to break the bodies of crews who couldn't adapt. "Your weapons rely on energy management," the admiral explained, her tone calm but tinged with the kind of confidence only humans could wield. "You fire beams, lances, particles. But beams can be reflected, refracted, dispersed. Shields can be tuned, drained, or overcharged. We don't play the same game. We play the one you've forgotten: mass and momentum. The universe doesn't negotiate with physics." The chamber murmured. Aliens who prided themselves on centuries of technological superiority exchanged uneasy glances. Rail cannons were considered primitive, brutal tools, long abandoned by most advanced militaries. But in human hands, primitive was a compliment. It meant reliable, devastating, and immune to the delicate countermeasures the galaxy had grown too dependent on. And when the admiral leaned in with that faint human smirk, she added the words that would spread like wildfire through every star system. "So tell me, Thalkor, why would we replace something that works with something that fails against us?" For the first time in generations, the Thalkor had no immediate answer. Their delegation tried to recover, hissing in low tones to one another, recalculating their strategy. The galaxy had always assumed that humans, as newcomers, would crave validation by adopting older technologies, just as dozens of uplifted species before them had done. The cycle was predictable. Primitives begged for energy weapons, arms dealers provided them, and the younger species became dependent customers. But the humans weren't begging. They were defying. And worse, they were revealing flaws in weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. The murmurs in the council chamber became a storm. The Kelver whispered to the Roth that perhaps humans were bluffing, overcompensating for their lack of sophistication. But then others, those who had seen humans fight firsthand, shook their heads. Pirates knew too well what human rail cannons could do. There were stories of frigates reduced to slag in seconds, of boarding parties annihilated before they set foot on human hulls. More chilling were the rumors from the frontier, where human colonies had survived attacks that should have erased them. Instead of being obliterated, humans dug in, fought back with improvised weapons, and somehow turned hopeless situations into legends. The Thalkor delegation tried to salvage their pride by declaring that human weapons were unsustainable, that rail cannons consumed too much energy, that projectiles were inefficient compared to precision plasma. The admiral simply tapped the holoprojector, pulling up combat footage. The room fell silent again as they watched. A human destroyer unleashing a salvo of rail slugs that tore through a Roth battleship like paper, its shields flashing uselessly as tungsten rods ripped straight through reactor cores. The explosion lit up the void in brutal silence. Efficient enough, the admiral said softly, and her words carried the weight of inevitability. To the older species, humanity was no longer a curiosity. They were a threat, a terrifying reminder that sometimes evolution doesn't move forward into elegance. Sometimes, it circles back to brutality that no shield can stop. The fallout from that meeting spread faster than any armada. On the neutral trade world of Uthar Prime, merchants whispered about humanity's refusal. In the gambling dens of the Roth, soldiers debated whether their plasma rifles were suddenly obsolete. On the frozen colonies of the Kelver, strategists drew up new battle scenarios, this time factoring in the terrifying possibility that energy shields, the cornerstone of galactic defense, were meaningless against humans. Across the stars, empires who had ignored Earth began to watch more closely, calculating whether it was wiser to ally with these brutal newcomers or to crush them before they grew stronger. But crushing humanity was easier said than done. Even the Thalkor, stung by humiliation, hesitated to move against them directly. They had expected humans to bow, not to expose the entire galaxy's reliance on fragile doctrines. And what shook the older races even more was the psychology behind humanity's response. It wasn't just the weapons. It was the mindset. Where others sought comfort in predictability, humans thrived in chaos. Where others feared loss, humans expected it and fought anyway. Their wars at home had tempered them in fire, had taught them to push technology to its limits and beyond. They didn't need sleek, delicate solutions, they built weapons that were crude in appearance but devastating in execution. And unlike other species, who fought to preserve empires, humans fought because survival was their inheritance. Every star they reached was another frontier, another challenge, another reason to dig in with stubborn defiance. To the galaxy, this was madness. To humans, it was simply who they were. And so, in that council chamber, the admiral's question, why downgrade, became more than a retort. It became a declaration of identity. The galaxy realized that humans weren't just another species entering the great game of empires. They were rewriting the rules of war itself. As the council session collapsed into chaos, the humans stood calm, almost bored, as if they had expected this storm all along. The admiral and her delegation gathered their data pads, saluted with a casualness that felt like mockery to some, and simply walked out. Behind them, alien dignitaries argued, shouted, and whispered in fear. What had they awakened? What sort of madness had they let into their carefully controlled galaxy? Back on the Dauntless, the admiral stood before her crew and reminded them that this was only the beginning. The galaxy thought in terms of shields and beams, of empires and hierarchies, but humans thought in terms of survival, adaptability, and the cold certainty that nothing in the universe could negotiate with physics. Already, Earth's engineers were experimenting with new ways to weaponize asteroids, to harness gravitational slingshots as weapons, to push rail technology to limits the Thalkor could not even imagine. Rumors spread that some human scientists were working on coil guns large enough to crack moons, while others dreamed of relativistic projectiles that could strike from across systems. To the old powers, these were nightmares. To humans, they were projects already underway. The admiral smiled as she watched her crew. Men and women hardened not just by training but by the shared understanding that their species had been underestimated for the last time. The Thalkor thought they were dealing with customers. The Council thought they were dealing with upstarts. None of them realized the truth yet, that humanity had no intention of joining the Galactic Order as it was. They would carve their own place with the tools they trusted, mass, momentum, and the indomitable will to survive. And if the galaxy didn't like that, well, as humans like to say, too bad.